And I'm very happy to introduce the panel that we have assembled today. We have Alan Green, Chief Operations Officer for Mustang Schools. Alan brings 33 years as an educator, a teacher, a coach, and an athletic administrator. He's been with Mustang Schools for 19 years, currently serving as the Chief Operations Officer. It seems it's a bit of the family business too. I understand your wife is also an administrator, and Alan has a son, Dylan, and a daughter, Mackenzie. From OG&E, we have Jessica King, the Manager of Energy Efficiency and Customer Programs. Jessica has been with OG&E for 13 years. Among many things, she has led the implementation of the award-winning Smart Hours Demand Response Program. Jessica is dedicated to advancing sustainable practices. She is a thought leader in the area of energy efficiency, who is passionate about developing innovative strategies and implementing effective solutions to reduce energy consumption and promote environmental consciousness in schools. And from our CLEAResult team, we have Patrick Curry, who is an Associate SEM Program Manager. Patrick has over 6 years of experience in energy efficiency. He is an Associate Manager and a Strategic Energy Management Coach who supports OG&E customers who are enrolled in the Continuous Energy Improvement, also called Strategic Energy Management Program. He coordinates energy audits, identifies savings opportunities, facilitates workshops, helps communicate these initiatives within schools, and tracks program benefits. Thank you all for joining us, panelists. Very happy to have you here, and thank you everyone in the audience. Happy to have you here as well. So today, as Nick said, we will be talking about schools. And schools have long been important participants in energy efficiency programs. In fact, we've designed entire programs to meet the unique needs of schools. I looked at CLEAResult's portfolio. We have over 30 programs that have some focus on serving schools. And now, as our portfolio and that of many utilities across the US and Canada starts to pivot a bit from just solely energy efficiency to also looking at energy transition, we see schools again showing up as a very important focus area. And just to kind of level set, when I say energy transition, that's not a term that I think everybody's familiar with. So there, I mean things like the electrification of transportation and the increasing use of distributed energy resources and kind of the frontier of utility programs. And these are all things, importantly, that entail increasing integration and interaction between utilities and their customers. So today, as you see on the agenda here, we're going to talk about the opportunity with schools across energy efficiency and energy transition. We're going to talk about some of the progress that has been made, kind of the current state of where we're at, the barriers that have been identified and some ways they've been addressed, talk about what lies ahead for the future, and hopefully have lots of time for good questions from the audience, and then we'll wrap things up. So, starting with the opportunity, and I think there's a lot of motivation. Don't worry, I'm not going to go through everything on this slide. I merely want to point out that, first of all, there's a lot of infrastructure around schools, both buildings and transportation. Just looking at the US, it's almost 100,000 public schools. In Canada, there's an additional 15,000 schools. With buses, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of buses and a lot being spent on student transportation. Some of the infrastructure is rather old. Schools are spending a lot on utilities and fuels, whether it's electricity, natural gas, or diesel. And the Department of Energy has estimated large potential savings. We, using our Choose EV fleet tools, have estimated large potential savings. That savings across facilities and schools can be on the order of 25 to even 50%. but I know it's not always about the money that is the opportunity and the motivation. So I'd like to begin by just inviting Alan. Can you start by just giving us an idea of the operations that Mustang has?
Well, just to tell everyone a little bit about Mustang Schools, we're in Southwest Oklahoma City area, actually Canadian counties where most of our schools are. Mustang consists of 16 school buildings plus about 10 other buildings. So we take care of about 26 buildings of varying sizes and operations. Mustang has about 14,000 students currently, rapidly growing district. We have about 1,600 employees, 2.5 million square feet approximately of conditioned space that we take care of all the time. And Mustang Schools has about a 72 square mile footprint on the southwest side of Oklahoma City.
Wow, that is a big operation. Must keep you very busy. I'm again thankful that you could be with us here today. So in those operations, when you think of energy projects or energy programs, what is it that brings Mustang to the table? What interests you? What do you see as opportunity there?
I joined operations, that side of things, in Mustang administration in 2015. And like many school districts, we're always facing monetary challenges. So our superintendent, when I took over in operations at that time, was tasking every department with becoming as efficient as possible, doing anything and everything they could to just streamline their department. So one of the things we looked at was energy savings. We were in cooperation with OG&E, and one of the very first thing that we took advantage of was the Smart Hours program. So with the OG&E team, I had to get completely educated on it. I really didn't know much about it. I'd seen advertisements on TV and things, and then how that also worked with schools versus homes. The Smart Hours for schools is 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock p.m. June through September. So it's at the end of the school day anyway. It seemed like a no-brainer. So we had a presentation with OG&E. I presented it to our superintendent and his administrative cabinet, and we decided to move forward with it. And that really started our journey with OG&E. And I was looking back through some notes from my binders from previous years, and we saved, just in Smart Hours alone, I don't know the exact number, but I know it's over $80,000 that first year just by switching over to Smart Hours alone.
Wow, that's great. So that cost saving opportunity is really a big driver, and you found that it was pretty easily out of the gate to realize some of those savings, it sounds like.
Well, there's no doubt about it. And just for those people in education, obviously that are attending this webinar, I began to understand how superintendents think when we were talking about the savings that we were starting to see, very tangible things right off the bat. Our superintendents started talking in terms of, that's a teaching position, that's money toward the classroom. So we felt very proud of the fact that just by doing our due diligence and operations, that we're putting money back tangibly into the classroom. And that just gave me a window of opportunity to see how superintendents think. Because obviously, as we're going to talk about as we go through this webinar, administrative support is huge to opening the doorway, the pathway to all of these things.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think of all the energy equivalencies we make. We say this many cars off the road or this many trees planted, but with schools, like equating it in terms of this is another teacher in the classroom. That's I can see how that would be very impactful.
And just to expand on that a little bit, some other notes that I had taken on, Smart Hours was really the first step in the journey, but working with OG&E and the team that they provided and all the great folks that we've worked with over the years, we really began, and they started using these terms. I'm an old coach, so I got to just go with the playbook here. They started talking about looking for the things that are the low-hanging fruit. Well, what were some of those items other than just joining the Smart Hours program? Well, they were looking at our HVAC schedules. Are we occupied all the time? And I hate to admit it, but like a lot of schools, we were probably just running 24/7, wide open all the time. You don't worry about it until something breaks. So that was an easy thing. We already had quite a bit of HVAC controls throughout the district. So that was an easy thing to adjust that. As an old coach, I leaned on other people, Norman Public Schools, Moore Public Schools that were already doing some of the energy things. So I looked at their energy policy. So we had a board adopted energy policy pretty quickly on by 2016. And just that way, it just put it into print. This is what we believe with Mustang Schools as far as energy policy, setting times, setting schedules, letting everyone know in advance. And we looked at all the comfort devices, the mini fridges, the microwaves, the space heaters, what I call mood lighting. There's a lot of Jimmy Buffett style lighting in classrooms now to set the mood for kids. And that's okay. But we wanted everyone to understand that all of those things have an impact on our utility costs. So we're not saying you can't have it, but we got to be smart about it and have a coordinated effort going forward. And with our energy policy, every one of those things was addressed.
Sounds very thorough. I also like the sharing experience with other schools. That sounds like a very continuous energy improvement, strategic energy management approach, which leads me to Patrick. You've been involved in the strategic energy management programs for a while. The things that Alan mentioned, are those things that you commonly see bringing schools to participation? Are there other things that you would call out motivations?
Yeah, working with Alan's always been a bit unique because he said he's an old coach, and we would bring things to Alan, and he would immediately say that's a good idea and roll it out to the district with the understanding of everybody in the district, students, staff, teachers, administration, they're all part of the energy team. So everyone's working towards a common goal. So that way teachers get what's happening and they're part of what's going on. Things aren't happening to them, they're happening because of them. And it's a mixed bag that we see, but it's not like Alan just has more time in the day than other districts or other energy managers. It's that spreading the message across the entire district. And I think one of the things that got us going out there was the immediate buy-in from the administration and the superintendent. That was pretty fantastic. We see a lot of other districts that we work with that want the exact same things that Mustang does. The issue may be they don't know how to motivate or get that message across to everybody. I think Alan being with the district for a while and having that coach mentality, saying, hey, we can do this. We're all going to work towards this goal. That's kind of what led to some success out there. And kind of what separated Mustang from the pack and kind of made them a leader in K through 12 energy efficiency.
Yeah, so a lot of schools coming with the same motivation, but not everybody with the same level of administrative support and the same coach to capacity to drive it forward.
Absolutely.
Jessica, I mean, from OG&E's perspective, how have you approached schools? Has school been a focus area? And if so, why?
Schools are absolutely a focus area for us. Back in the mid 2015 timeframe when Alan's talking about, we really took an approach where we wanted to analyze and help schools be on the right rate plan. We thought that was a good starting point to help schools understand what's available and what would work best for them. Like Alan said, the hours are a little bit different. And when you're migrating to like a time of use type scenario, that is an adjustment, and it's hard to see how you would apply that. But Alan had a great approach, working and like with everyone instead of just dictating what exactly would happen. From there, we have our school and government program where we spend a lot of effort and dollars investing in our schools. A lot of it for that exact reason. I mean, the kids are so important. Why would we want a school to spend those dollars in energy when they could be investing it in our kids? So it's a great opportunity for us. We spend a lot of time with education programs. We do a lot with students, with like energy kits and things like that. So it goes beyond just helping set a rate plan or giving rebates on lighting updates and things like that, but really investing in the teachers and the students so they can take what they're learning in the school home and apply it in their personal life too.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's such a center of the community and a place where, you know, the educational aspect is already there, so you can bridge from there into people's homes and businesses. That makes a lot of sense. Let's talk a little bit about we'll start with what Mustang has done, because you both mentioned the Smart Hours participation as kind of that easy first step, but the participation in energy efficiency programs has been quite impressive, and now starting participation in a fleet electrification management program. I mean, you can see the numbers on the screen here, but it's not always about the numbers. I'm curious, from your perspective, Alan, what do you see the highlights of what Mustang has done with OG&E programs?
I think I just, in making some notes, I'll just go through some things kind of from a linear perspective. When we started our journey back in 2015 with the Smart Hours program, that really opened the door to the OG&E team. They came out, we had an energy workshop just to learn about all the things energy management that I really had never had been a part of in my previous endeavors. So one of the things that OG&E provided, they did an in-depth benchmark report of the district where they did a deep dive study of each site, just to say, okay, here's a baseline study from where we are to see where we can be. So a lot of not just suggestions, but hard data that they would give to Mustang that I could take the administration, and we'll just keep on touching on that. But administrative buy-in is such a huge part of it. You know, it's great for them to see numbers, but then also the data and the progress along the way to back up everything that was going on. So that really has helped. What I feel like, and it's not all credit to me by any means, it's district-wide, it's superintendent, it's all of our administration as well. But what we really consider a culture of energy savings that we've created in Mustang, all of us collectively have done that, where new teachers come in, and we have about 1,600 employees, probably about in the neighborhood of 900 teachers. So I know that we're always going to have quite a few, maybe, you know, in the hundreds of new teachers every year. So we want them to understand when they come in, this is the culture that you're walking into. They literally are going to see that on the first day of school when we have our back to school get together, and OG&E sets up shop out in the lobby to hand out literature and even things that they can use at their homes. But it really just kind of sets the tone for, hey, yeah, this is something that we do. Energy savings and energy management is a huge part of what we do. But they understand this is why we're doing it. We're doing it to help save money, to put it back into salaries and classrooms, all those things. So the culture of energy savings, I think, is just a huge part of what I would encourage schools to really be a part of, and it starts at the top of your administration and school board. But I think OG&E is going to make that very easy. They're going to give you tools to be successful. And I'm talking about literally things, some of the things we do every year throughout the year when we have breaks, fall break, Thanksgiving break, winter break, spring break, the whole 9 yards, and certainly in the summer is where we have energy shutdowns, and OG&E provides materials and things to send out in an email. We do calendar invites to let them know. Well, we also want everyone to know that we're paying attention. So over those breaks, OG&E has provided sticky notes. So literally we go throughout the schools, and it's just a friendly reminder, but it checks off, hey, you did a good job. You shut your blinds, you close your doors, you unplug your refrigerator over the breaks, all those kind of things. I learned real quick that if you put a smiley face on a sticky note, teachers love that. Because after we did that first break, I would be walking through the school, hey, why didn't I get a smiley face? Okay, that stuff really works. So it seems like a very simple thing, but those sticky notes were huge. And we want to make sure when the teachers come back, it's not just something that we talk about, it's real. We're actually going to check to see if you guys are doing these things. But at the end of the day, it's so they understand this is putting money back where the superintendent can use it for other things just besides paying the utility bills. Just a couple other things I want to add to that is looking back through some notes early on. through plugging in literally to OG&E and all these things. It wasn't just the smart hours, it was the benchmarking report. But we early on, through retroactively buildings we had already built, we applied for some incentives. We had put a new chiller at one of our schools. We got a $7,000 check for the chiller at Horizon Intermediate. We had built a geothermal site, Prairie View Elementary, one of our sites. We got a $33,400 check for that. So in addition to the smart hours savings, you can see where I'm going with this. I mean, the low hanging fruit, some of these things, and that gave us great incentive to move forward with future buildings to follow a lot of these same examples, that you can help defray some of the construction costs by getting in before the building's built. But even after we built the building, we're getting incentive checks back from it. So a lot of those things really early on made it's just a no-brainer. And wow, wish we'd known about this before.
Yeah, I like how you've got very strong examples both on building a culture, and I think you can't overstate how important that is. And it sounds like there's been a lot going on to intentionally develop that, and then also on the capital project side. So it's really running the gamut of activities. Jessica, like how broadly is this happening? I mean, we obviously Mustang is here because they're a leader, and Alan is doing great things with the schools and all the support he has there. I think there are somewhere around 200 schools in OG&E territory, or school districts in OG&E territory. Probably a lot more facilities. How broad is the spectrum of engagement among schools? Are they all doing the culture and the geothermal projects, or not so much?
Well, I mean, we have to definitely recognize Allen and Mustang. I think they are a kind of a commercial for us, right? I mean, if we could say this is kind of the blueprint that a school could take and execute, I think Allen has written that for us, right? He's done an excellent job. The engagement is critical from top down, like Allen said. And then we have some schools that have yet to participate. I mean, it is, a lot harder for some districts that have smaller staff and resources, thinking about how do we get started. Again, we try and make it very easy, but it is a challenge in some areas. We do have a lot of engagement kind of in the middle, where schools are doing a lot of lighting projects. We do have a education program manager, Jeannie Troxel. She spends a lot of time dedicated to going out, working with teachers. We're part of Green Schools. She does work with children. She does Living Wise kits with 6th graders. There's a lot of engagement outside of just rebates or like behavioral changes schools can make. We're spending a lot of time providing information and support. Of course, we have you guys on our team that help us spread the message and do the good work, providing that first step of an energy assessment and creating this strategic plan of like what we could do first and how we can build that into the plan. I know, and Alan will probably talk about this, is funding and going before boards and getting approvals and bond money and things like that. So it seems like one of the challenges, and we'll get into challenges, I know, is timing and funding, but there is just a wide range going from not engaged at all to super engaged, and we're happy to meet and work with schools in anywhere on the spectrum and help them get going.
Yeah, I think that's important, and having someone like Jeannie, who's I'm sure she's instrumental in things like having OG&E show up at the back to school. I love that. Patrick, I think, you've been involved in delivery of some different programs. Where do you see, is there a particularly good fit kind of program for schools that you see where you've seen a lot of school participation?
Yeah. So when I started working with Mustang, it was with capital lighting improvements and some of those HVAC projects, which, getting new LED lights, they are more efficient. oftentimes you get better results from students in the classroom if your LED lights are, if your room is lit properly for that application. So that's a great program that, as your old T12s and T8s are running out, go ahead and make those LED switches, and almost any school can take advantage of it. OG&E has a fantastic program geared towards schools to help them to do more of their district. If it wasn't for the incentives, they might be able to do one campus, but with the OG&E incentives, they might be able to do a whole district. So that's one of those low-hanging fruit programs that we kind of encourage everybody, go ahead and do it. But if you're not in a position to go out for bond, or you don't want to get into a lease purchase, there's a midstream lighting program where, as you get burnout, you can go to buy directly from the warehouses or the wholesalers or the supply shops, and you get that immediate OG&E incentive tacked on right to your 12 TLEDs or whatever it is that you're buying. I don't run the Smart Hours program, but I can't talk about it enough whenever I do talk to brand new school districts, because we started doing this immediately with Alan. We don't want to make teachers or students uncomfortable. You always want to have a safe and clean and dry environment, but when there's no one in the building, you want to operate it as efficiently as possible. And Mustang and Alan kind of started, they switched from energy efficiency immediately to how can we just shut stuff off when there's nobody here. And we didn't really have to coach them down that road. They just, we did the lighting projects, we did the chiller projects, which those chiller projects, expanding the loops and putting in those new chillers, made life so much easier for the students and the teachers. So those needed to happen. But Alan was like, well, what's next? What should we do? And we're like, well, while there's no one there, let's shut it off or shut it down. And that was kind of the next immediate step. But yeah, there are a ton of programs geared towards the schools to kind of help transition them from point A to point B, which is what we're kind of discussing here today. So yeah, those lighting incentives, those are fantastic.
I do have to add.
Jessica, and then Alan.
Well, I was just going to say, Mustang was, again, one of the first schools to really adopt Smart Hours. And when we heard that Alan was going around unplugging Sensi's and microwaves and refrigerators, we were a bit worried, because it's all about how people feel and comfort levels. And, it's all in how you execute it, right? And so I think Alan has demonstrated what is possible and has been very successful. So I do remember that from that time frame that we kind of giggled about it a little bit, and we're very curious how it was going to play out with the staff. So, but it has been successful, so we're all good there.
Seems like it. Alan, anything to add?
Well, I was just going to chime in. I want to make sure to give credit to a couple of people that I really leaned on early on that were already in the energy management game, so to speak. Todd Stapleton down in Moore, Jerry Prevette, who is now retired down in Norman. And I literally went to them and said, hey, what are you doing? What's your ideas? And Jerry was great at showing me all his HVAC controls, their settings, how they worked with the schools and everything they did there. So that was great. Todd, they had just gone through a process where they had really restricted a lot of those things, the comfort things in the classroom to save money. So I don't have a whole lot of original ideas, but I'm an old coach. All you coaches out there know what I mean. We could steal ideas from anyone or just, follow their playbook. So along with the OG&E team was just very instrumental in really helping with that. But something I want to make sure that I didn't miss later on, but one of the things that OG&E had the suggestion to do was do an energy poster contest, energy savings poster contest. So we've done that. I think it's been a year or so since we've done it, but 2 or 3 years in a row at least, we did a energy savings poster contest where we got the elementary school, the art classes, just kind of gave them a little bit of direction on what we were looking for. And the art classes and the elementary kids, they ran with it. I mean, we would get a stack, well over 300 or 400 of these entrants of their ideas, and they got it. It was all kinds of energy savings ideas. The posters would do a lot better telling you about this than I can articulate it, but they got it real quick. They understood. So yes. I think that was instrumental. That was a great idea to get the kids involved, and we would have a board meeting where the top 3 candidates, their artwork was shown, and then we had a winner. So OG&E did a good job of really showing us, hey, we'll show up at the board meeting. We're going to give them a behind glass, a copy for them to take home and make a big deal of it, and take pictures with the board and all that kind of stuff. Which anytime you highlight the kids, that's the best thing. So it seems like a small thing, but I think that really helped buy in with the community to say this is not something behind the scenes we're doing at school and only the administrators and the board knows about it. We're trying to encourage the kids where they really understand it as well. So it seems like a small thing, but I think that's really has been instrumental in our program.
That's a great example and seems like an excellent way to get stakeholder buy-in. And by the way, I mean, I'm all for crowdsourcing ideas. That you don't have to be the one who comes up with everything. It sounds like there's been great sharing among the schools and even getting ideas from students. I love that. Let's talk a little bit. We've touched on a little bit some of the barriers. I mean, there's currently, or in the last few years in schools, there's been a lot of uncertainty to deal with, of course. But hopefully things are kind of leveling off now. But nonetheless, there's still budget issues. There's staffing issues, and let's face it, it's not always easy to get things done in infrastructure projects in general, and in public infrastructure projects. There's a lot of processes to go through. Alan, you kind of started your story with actually your work on this emerging out of a budget issue as a solution, which I thought was really interesting, kind of taking a barrier and this program participation being a solution. But just in general, how, what have you seen as barriers? Have there been any as you've been working through all this?
Well, I think, we've talked about this a lot, but I can't emphasize enough how big administrative buy-in, because I think that might be a barrier initially, but hopefully with us, Mustang, learning from other districts that have already done some things, OG&E helping coach us up along the way, giving us the good information, the data to show our administration that led to the buy-in. And once you got started, everything really just snowballed after that. But funding is also always going to be an issue for schools. We're no different than any other school, so that can be a huge barrier. But so we're very dependent on bonds passing to not only build schools but just for capital improvements. But after we had already begun to see a lot of success with OG&E and their programs, about that time we had a bond in 2017, which has built 3 schools, it built our performing arts center, just all kinds of things. But OG&E, we wanted to know what the current condition of our schools were. So they did an in-depth engineering survey, came out to all of our schools, this unbelievably detailed report that we use as a district to say, hey, this is not just me making this up. This is an engineering group that has come and analyzed the schools, and they said, hey, you need this much money to upgrade. Now, we didn't solve all the world's problems, but it did help us get $5 million in that bond to be able to go and retrofit some of our buildings and get some updated equipment. But it couldn't just be me standing in front of the board and say, hey, I'd like $5 million, please. It had to be backed up by that report that gave a lot of validity to that. So funding is always going to be an issue, but I just know OG&E has done that twice for us now. And we just asked. They could have said no, but they did it. That was huge. So, but also we talked about the rebates for lighting and retrofits. I know Patrick was talking about some of that, just very tangible things. I hope schools really understand. We have 3 or 4 of our older schools that are still with the old. I think we've gotten away from most part with the T12s, but with the T8s, this is just recently in the last few months, one of our lighting companies. And anytime a lighting company approaches me, my first question to them, are you, I'm not trying to make a pun here, plugged in with OG&E and this CLEAResult group? And if they're not, I just don't even visit with them. Well, one of the lighting contractors said, hey, we have this LED. It's just pretty much a plug and play. So we're in the middle of getting our funding in place, and we're going to go do that where we don't have to change out any ballast. well, we're going to change out every light in the district. So it ends up being a lighting retrofit to get to LEDs. And once we get all the hurdles and everything done, we will get refunded the entire project. Plus, we're going to make about $200 or $300. So we're going to put up about $11,500 to buy all the lights, and we'll get every single bit of that repaid to us. I mean, that's amazing right there. And so we plan, as long as these lights are available, we're going to go replicate that at other schools as well. But that's an easy sell to our administration. Hey, we're going to have to put this money up front. We're going to get it all back.
Yeah, I mean, a couple things that you've mentioned. Getting the administration buy-in. Sounds like you were able to get that fairly early on, which is great and key. The other thing about addressing the budget challenge, I heard two things. Like, you need information to address a budget, to even present, like, this is the budget we need and why. And that's something that programs can do, is help assemble that information to make the case. And then into implementation, any way that they can buy down or show the payback, that also helps address the funding barrier. I'm curious, and this is really, I mean, this is a question for all, so maybe we just do a quick roundtable here. Stakeholders buy-in keeps coming up. Just like top 2, 3, who do you think of as being key stakeholders? And we'll start with Alan and kind of just work around the virtual room here. So who have been key stakeholders in getting these projects approved and underway, Alan?
Well, I mean, clearly our administration and our school board, but I think with the data that OG&E helps provide, like I said, we're not only the data to help provide that information to where we can get money for capital projects, but then we want to show the follow through as well with the poster contest. OG&E comes out and gives us the big foam check, the $33,400 for the geothermal. That's important for your school board and the administrators and everyone to see. But I would say a huge part of this is you got to get staff buy-in. I mean, teachers, that's another huge group right there, because they're living it in the classroom, and that's obviously where the business of education is done. So we want to help them understand. We're not trying to. Everybody's got a different style of teaching. I kind of referenced the Jimmy Buffett. I'm from a different generation, but the mood lighting, and I'm literally like Christmas lights in the classroom. Hey, but if that's how kids learn now, and that's what teachers need to get the kids interested, I'm all for it. We're not against that, but please just make sure when you go to lunch, when you go to recess, certainly when you leave at the end of the day, we got to turn all those things off. So the administration, school board members, certainly the community, but you got to get your staff to buy in and understand why. But the longer you have it, the more the culture you build to it, and we're going to restrict their method of teaching. It really becomes easy once you've created that.
Yeah. So the board, the administration, the school board, staff. Patrick, anything that you would add to that?
Nope, that's exactly right. We are a resource provided by OG&E. So we make recommendations. We don't tell folks how to handle their business, and we want to be as involved as they want us to be. And from the jump, once Alan started seeing these programs, he would ask more questions. And I've never had a district, we've offered it, I've never had a district come to me and say, hey, we want to go out for bond. What would y'all do? I was like, oh, I could spend other folks' money really well. So that engineering scan that we did out there in 15 or 16 was very comprehensive. We gave them an option A, B, and C, and then Mustang decided, what they wanted to present to, the folks that live in their districts and what they wanted to burden taxpayers with. I think that's the absolutely best way to go about it. And while that's going on, we're also doing teacher engagement workshops. So the teachers and staff are getting education, and they can take this right back to the classroom. OG&E is still doing those programs, and they're doing them throughout the whole service territory, and it's awesome. So just like Alan said, superintendent and the board buy-in, and then your teachers and your students, that's fantastic. And I don't know how many board meetings I've been to there in Mustang, Alan, but I've noticed a few things that kind of separate y'all apart. When I go to y'all's school board meetings, there are a lot of parents there. And that's something I don't see in a lot of other districts. So when you recognize, Johnny and Sally for their poster contests, and then you get OG&E and Jeanette and you with the big check up there, everyone's seeing what's going on. So you get happy parents, happy teachers, happy board, happy superintendent, and y'all have saved a ton of money. Those are all your stakeholders right there being very happy. So that's exactly what Alan and Mustang there have implemented.
Great. And Jessica, I mean, I think Patrick and Alan have probably covered the school stakeholders pretty well, but I think about from OG&E perspective, like stakeholders within OG&E, the regulator, are there other folks that need to be kind of brought into this?
I would say the commission, right? I mean, we are providing updates to the commission, with our filing, and then we have 2 stakeholder meetings throughout the year. We have lots of interveners, Oklahoma Sustainability Network, and other organizations in the state that definitely have a perspective on our programs and what we're offering. All are very excited about our school programs and what we offer, but yeah, I think Patrick and Alan definitely captured that side.
Great. All right. Well, time is just flying by here. Let's talk about the future. So, great opportunities and rates and smart hours, getting into energy efficiency projects. And now we're starting to look at things like electric buses and perhaps more. And so this is what we're referring to as the energy transition. And I'm curious, Jessica, from your perspective, I mean, I've got I've got on the slide here a snapshot from OG&E's integrated resource plan. So that might be kind of leading the witness a little bit, but I'd like to know from your perspective, like, do you see the needs of OG&E changing around programs? And if so, what's driving that?
So we're currently in the middle of our 3-year portfolio. And yes, you are leading me here, but this is probably what we're most excited about. I mean, we're fully expecting our next portfolio to evolve, right? We understand the desire for renewables, for additional savings. The electric company, OG&E, has a need for demand response through distributed energy resources, and that could largely be related to schools. One thing I'm thinking a lot about right now is the big batteries that the schools are going to be driving around that are not going to be utilized during the summer, right? Mm-hmm. So how can the school get the benefit of the battery during the school year and commutes? And how could we partner and create a program where we could use that as demand response in the summer? So we have a lot of work to do. We have some pilots going on right now, and we're evaluating, the right size, the combination of technologies, rates, and renewables. And we'll be exploring that more on this next portfolio. So I think there is quite a bit of opportunity in the future that Mustang and other schools, for that matter, to participate above and beyond kind of that low-hanging fruit we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think Mustang has about 90 potential batteries on wheels, if I'm right. You probably haven't thought of them that way, Alan, or maybe you're starting to think of them that way a little bit. But obviously, that's not something where you snap your fingers and overnight you have all electric buses. All of these things are going to take time. I'm curious, like as we start talking about things like solar or electric buses, Alan, is Mustang ready for new programs like that? Is that something you're thinking of, excited about? Where are you on those potential new offerings?
Well, we're certainly open to all those ideas, but obviously there's the capital side of that as well that would take funding to get started. So we're in the process even now being part of a group that's you guys are taking us through how would this work for electric buses and solar and different kind of things. So we're really just kind of in a fact-finding phase right now, absorbing all this information. I know we have a couple of school board members in particular that at least wanted us to pursue, some of these avenues to see if it's viable for us in the future. So we're certainly open to it. Don't know a whole lot about it, but learning how it goes and just how the funding would work, give or take. A brand new bus right now, a gas or diesel bus is about $100,000, quite a bit more for an electric bus. So how does the rebates and incentives and all that work? And then how are the batteries maintained? All those things. So we're really just learning. That's an area I'm not an expert by any means. So we're listening and learning.
Yep. That's where you started with the other programs as well. It sounds like, so that's a good place to start. We're about down to 10 minutes, so I definitely want to make sure to open it up to any audience questions. So I'll just start looking to see if those are coming in. But while I'm doing that, Patrick, can you talk a little bit about Alan mentioned the looking at electrification of fleets program. Can you say a little bit about how we've adapted programs to start investigating these areas?
Yep, absolutely. And like Alan said, there's a learning curve. So, for the most part, jumping off, this is a educational program for these districts that may want to be going in that direction. And when we looked at launching this in Oklahoma, one of our first things was, well, who's already engaged and who's open to learning something? And that our first thought was, let's talk to the folks over at Mustang. So yeah, we've gone from capital to strategic energy management to the potential for the electric buses. And just like Alan, I'm learning a ton. And I think this has been a really cool program that OG&E has implemented to educate schools about how they can start to switch their fleet over. And I really dig it.
Great. Well, I did get one question via chat, and another one coming in the question pen. I'm going to start with one I got via chat. So you mentioned, Alan, the upfront funding barrier, definitely very real. Are you seeing federal funding opportunities being a significant opportunity in addressing that? I'm aware of two funding opportunities. There's the EPA's Clean School Bus program, which I think has $1 billion a year over 5 years for clean school buses, and then there's a DOE Renew America Schools, which has $500 million. Are these federal funding programs something that have crossed your radar? Do they look useful?
Well, our transportation director, who's under operations, could speak to that better. But I do realize, I know that over the last 2 or 3 years, it's called the DERA, D-E-R-A. Can't remember exactly what the acronym, but it really is to get some of our older, more polluting, I guess, buses off. So if you sold those buses, if you got them off the fleet, they would give some incentives. It hasn't really manifested itself in an EV situation yet. But I know they're always looking at any kind of federal programs, and we have a federal programs director that's looking into that. So we certainly want to tap into all those resources. I couldn't tell you right now, other than the DERA grant, things that we have actually taken advantage of yet, but I know we're looking into them.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it sounds like you have some experience and have somebody who's kind of dedicated to looking at that. So hopefully that's something you can capitalize on. Jessica, OG&E perspective, are you looking at in any way kind of potential for layering program federal funding and program funding?
Yes, so we have a group now. She's hired a few more people to her team that is dedicated to digesting IRA and IIJA, any potential funding related to schools or really any of our customers. We did when the grant application came open for electric buses. We tried really hard to make sure we were engaged with all of the schools to help them fill out the applications to get as many buses awarded to our schools as possible. So we helped there, and we're continuing to just look for other opportunities of how to layer and take advantage of as much federal funding as we can to complement what we already offer.
That's great. Yeah. I see so let me turn to this other question. So we talked a lot about the things that Mustang has done. What and this doesn't necessarily just have to be about Mustang, it can be about other schools in general. But what are strategies or projects that have been identified but maybe not completed yet? The sort of things on the roadmap that you'd like to do. And I'll start with Alan, but also Patrick, if you have anything to chime in from the other schools' perspective.
Well, I think one of the biggest ways to really start saving energy costs is the HVAC controls. When I got into operations about 2015, a lot of times when you build a new school, whoever was the architect or whoever was the construction manager, not dictates, but they'll put in maybe what their thoughts on HVAC controls are. So one of the things we've tried to do over the last few years, and some of that with that 2017 bond money, is really streamline our HVAC controls. We're not 100% there yet. I would say we're probably 60 to 65% where we have direct control, where my mechanical team and myself and our assistant superintendent, we can get on there and manipulate schedules and temperatures and all types of those things. But so we have some older schools where it's still, manual. You got to make sure your custodians and your teachers and everything are adjusting those. So I think that's just a huge, it's not necessarily cheap, but when you incorporate those HVAC controls and you get those set up in your schools, I mean, and you control that from the administrative level, and that is just massive amounts of savings right there. So that's an ongoing project, but every building we build now, we use ES2, which is automated logic, and EarthSmart is another two of we only have two controls companies now. And when we build these new buildings, we're going to build them with those controls already in there, and obviously LED lighting, and just build it how we want going forward, not how it was built 15, 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, so many of these projects, particularly when you have so many facilities, so many buses, like everything is going to have to be staged over time. I mean, you get the plan, you get the playbook, and then you could be working those plays over multiple years, many years, to get through all the facilities. Makes a lot of sense. Couple more questions coming in. We're short on time, so I'll do these quickly. One is a question about like the SEM program model for schools, and I just want to clarify that continuous energy improvement we've referred to sometimes is basically a strategic energy management program. So that combines the workshops, the facility assessments, some of the educational engagement tools we've been talking about today. So that's very much a part of what Mustang has engaged in here with the OG&E programs. And another question was about what have been the estimated emission reductions of these projects. That's kind of a tough number to maybe come up with on the fly if nobody has that at hand, but if anybody has it at hand, I'll invite you to throw it out there. Maybe something we can get in the future. All right, so we've just got 2 minutes left here, so let's wrap things up with a kind of, we've covered a lot of ground today. I just want to come back all the way back to the beginning for those people who are just thinking about, this is all great, but where do I start? I think on this question, I'll start with Jessica and go around the room. Where would you suggest that someone who's interested in launching programs to engage schools begin?
I think the first step would be to call us, engage us. If we're not reaching out to you, reach out to us. We have a large team with dedicated resources for this exact work. And we would be happy to come out and do that assessment and start that strategic plan working with you and just really becoming your partner. So I would say the first step would just be to reach out, and then we will help take it from there.
Yes, schools reach out to your utilities and ask. That makes a lot of sense. Patrick, schools getting started.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the first things that we do is like Jessica said, was that initial assessment. But what schools can do on their own is look at how you're operating your buildings and determine, are you using, without unplugging or switching a single light bulb, how are you using your space? And are you using it as efficiently as possible? And then after that, just like what Jessica said, get in touch. They'll come out and do that assessment, and we can build a plan going from there. That's how I would get started.
Great. And Alan, where to begin?
I completely agree. When I was transitioning into operations, I think OG&E had already reached out to our administration. So I was just handed some information. Hey, reach back out to these folks and get started. And when the team came out, I mean, that's where it all started. They came to us. We didn't have to go to them. And then just they will help you through the entire thing. And I can't reiterate enough that once a school district gets into this and the ball gets rolling, you're going to think, why in the world have we not been doing this for years and years? It's a simple, easy yes. It is not a difficult thing to do, and they're going to help you along the way. So I'm looking at you guys out there. Call them and say yes, and you will reap the rewards quickly.
Well, I love that. I can't close any better than that. So we'll leave those as the final words. Thank you very much, panelists, Alan, Jessica, Patrick. This has been a fun conversation, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you to the audience. We'll hope to see you in our next webinar.